Hello there, folks. I have been concerned about my man. I'm going to let you know what I've been hearing brain to brain. But it's like I said, brain to brain has been woefully inaccurate, but what I'm hearing is pretty disturbing. Um, Vladimir seems to tell me that he was a prisoner of war. The Jesuits, when he went on the South America tour, apparently he got kidnapped using TaserNet technology, and they brought him over to, I think he said China. Like I said, I may end up making a corrected video, but he went somewhere. He went to a Jesuit prison, and they tortured him. Apparently, they were trying to get him to make some sort of public confession that he never knew me, that I was crazy and all this stuff, and he just wouldn't do it. And and then they used his clone to take over Russia. And basically, his Jesuit clone was there when the Boeing jet crashed in the Ukraine. You know, the Malaysia Airlines jet crashed, and it was his clone who did that, not the real Vladimir. So that whole thing with the plane crash was a Jesuit orchestration to destroy Vladimir Putin, and they were going to use his clone to do it. So it appears that the real Vladimir Putin was a prisoner of war in China or someplace with Chinese Jesuits. China itself is that country, as far as I know, has stood behind me. So in our conspiracy law, so it was not bad Chinese. It was not. There are some good Chinese over there. So, anyways, it appears, from what I'm hearing from brain to brain, and this makes sense when you study these photographs, that Vladimir Putin was at Church of Gail, but he has to come to Earth often to do his job as Russian president. So they had the Jesuits, even if they tried to switch him out with a clone at Church of Gail, it would be too obvious. So they had to use a different strategy on Vladimir than they used with the rest of the men on my marriage list. And it appears they decided to kidnap him when he was on Earth. And then they put him they made a POW out of him. And you can tell by looking at this picture, he looks pretty beat up. He's a tough guy. For him to show this much pain and suffering means he went through hell. So this is not good. And I'm inclined to believe that what I'm hearing brain to brain about him being a prisoner of war is accurate. You may say, well, how in the world did he get back? Well, Dmitry Medvedev was dealing with the Vladimir Putin clone, and he noticed that he didn't seem quite like Vladimir. Now, if anybody should know Vladimir Putin, it would be Dmitry Medvedev. So Dmitry ordered an investigation and discovered that the real Vladimir Putin was being held as prisoner of war. And he got him out of there. And then just within the past couple days, we've been seeing the real Vladimir in the news. Before that, it looks like it was probably his clone. And I believe that the real Vladimir Putin had nothing to do with the airplane that crashed in the Ukraine. That was all the work of the Vladimir Putin clone, whose job was to destroy Vladimir Putin. And you must say he's done a pretty good job up until now. Anyways. So that makes sense when you study these photographs and stuff. You may say, why? What about these sad photos of Vladimir when he was in South America earlier? From what I understand, Church of Gail was constantly being taken over by what they thought was my sister. It turned out to be her clone, apparently. And then when they got rid of her, they presumed they solved the clone problem, and they didn't. What I've been hearing brain to brain the past couple days is that there was actually a clone takeover at Church of Gail, especially with my men. So when they thought they got rid of my sister, all the clones of Gerard Butler, Brent Spiner, Matthew McConaughey, Hugh Jackman that were at Church of Gail played like they were the real person, and they acted relieved. And then they told me a lie, brain to brain, saying, well, we can't contact you now because if we do, then the Jesuits will get a lock on our location and they'll blow up Church of Gail. I wasn't sure what to believe. Like I said, this is all brain to brain. But what I've been doing is studying photographs to see if what I'm seeing online kind of lines up with what I'm hearing brain to brain. Because I haven't heard from my men since June 21st, so I'm doing a lot of guesswork here. So, anyways, let's take a look at some pictures here. If you can look at Vladimir, you can see he's been in distress. These are all recent pictures, so he's obviously been dealing with something. So it appears like what I've been hearing could be true. So whenever Church of Gail got taken over by my sister, he looked really unhappy. And then he, I don't know. It's obvious from looking at Vladimir's photos, something's been going on this month. Maybe what I'm hearing is not 100% accurate, but it could be close. Okay. It appears that up until today or yesterday, Church of Gail has been run by Jesuit clones. First it was my sister, then when they got rid of her, then the clones of my men took over. And what they discovered appears to be that they actually kidnapped my real men and put them in prison inside of Church of Gail. And the Church of Gail is huge. It's like a city. So with the clones up there pretending to be Brent Spiner and running the ship and lying to me and saying they can't contact me because, the ship could, the Jesuits could get a lock on our target. Well, Jesuits didn't have to worry about getting a lock on the target because they took over the ship using their clones. Anyways, look at all these pictures. Just study the pictures. When you look at Matthew McConaughey's pictures that have been posted this month, July 2014, definitely the clone. So it seems pretty obvious to me that Matthew McConaughey has not been in charge of his life this month. So maybe he got knocked out. From what I understand, what they did with my men when they had them in prison was they didn't give them any food. I think they did give them water. As far as torture, I'm not sure. But from what I understand, they just, because I made the video yesterday asking scientists to scan for clones, we discovered that at Church of Gail there was a big clone takeover, and my men were all almost like in a coma because they hadn't had any food for like 3 weeks. So apparently the kidnapping happened several weeks ago, which might explain why I haven't heard from my men. You say, well, why haven't you heard from them today? I'm not sure. I asked Vladimir about this, brain to brain, and he seemed to tell me that my men are just really, really tired, that they're having to use some sort of advanced science to go in there and reconstruct part of their brains. They actually suffered some brain damage from going into a coma because they hadn't eaten anything for weeks. So apparently Brent Spiner, they were a little bit easier on him because they know that I've been keeping up on his Twitter page, and he's been making Twitter comments that seemed like him. And apparently they ordered him to continue his Twitter so nobody would suspect he'd been switched out with his clone, but that was all he could do. And they kind of kept him alive in better condition than the others so that he'd have enough brain with him, enough of his brains that he could keep up his Twitter page. They didn't want the world to know that they had switched out my men with the clones because then it would defeat their strategy. Better than blowing up Church of Gail would be to take it over with clones. I mean, then they can totally discredit me as crazy. So apparently that was their strategy. It appears, though, that because I asked the scientists to scan for the clones, that now my men are all in a hospital. They're all recuperating. From what I understand, when the clones took over Church of Gail, they really messed up the computer systems. And it's going to take them at least a couple days to get that fixed. Vladimir seems to tell me he thinks that in a couple days my men will contact me and let me know if what I'm hearing brain to brain is accurate. But study these pictures. Matthew McConaughey, definitely a clone. Hugh Jackman, he does make appearances with his wife, Deborah Furness or whatever. Gerard Butler's advised him to do that. He's got to deal with a clone of his wife to make public appearances. The photo I have of him with his wife at the Oscars is definitely the real Hugh Jackman. But the other photos, I'm not sure. And with the Hugh Jackman photos, you see his eyes look really, really tired in one of the pictures. So he looks like he's been going through something this month. All the pictures are this month except for on Hugh Jackman, except for the Oscar one that was taken in the Oscars this year. Gerard Butler, definitely dealing with a clone here. With the one with bug eyes looking real. You can always tell Jesuit clones because they're shallow. They have no depth, no no true depth to them, no true manliness. They're shallow. It looks to me like we're dealing with a Gerard Butler clone. So from looking at the photos, it appears what I'm hearing brain to brain may be correct, that we've had a clone onslaught. And this has been the latest Jesuit strategy to try to fool the world, get me written off as crazy, because the Jesuits have done a brilliant job of covering up their cloning technology. So just pray for my men, okay? Pray that we eliminate all of the clones and that my real men will be safe and sound. But this is the latest I've heard, okay? You may say, why don't they just kill all your men right away? And I even asked Vladimir that. He says for some odd reason they felt it was better to keep them alive for a while. I'm not sure why, but maybe I'll get more details later. Jesuits have to be careful in killing the real person because first of all, if they're going to kill my men, they'll have to kill all of them. Because if one of them stays alive and exposes what the Jesuits have done, it would be very bad for Jesuit public relations, which may explain why they allowed my men to stay alive, even though they started becoming semi-dead, from what I understand, going into like a coma state. And then they had to worry about Vladimir Putin because they were torturing him, but he hadn't succumbed to them yet. And, they hadn't killed him yet. So my guess is that if the Jesuits decide to kill my men, they would want to be sure to do it in a way where they would not be blamed for it. And as long as one of the top men on my marriage list remains alive, that they could risk exposure. So my guess is Jesuits not being as stupid. Obviously, they're not stupid because they've been able to hide their cloning technology and their new Conky technology from the world. They've taken over the internet so that, they can steal all my writing. They're very, very smart. Zach Knight's a computer genius. So my guess is they would, if they're going to kill my men, they'd make sure they got all of them before they do it. So that may explain why they kept them all alive, even though it looks like if I didn't make that video yesterday, it's possible that we may not have caught this in time. So scientists out there continue to make sure the scanners worldwide are working to scan all Jesuit clones. The scanners need to be set up to execute Jesuit clones, okay? And also to detect. Apparently, when the Jesuits took over Church of Gail, they messed up all of the scanners worldwide that we have. We use scanners to find Jesuits. They messed up the scanners so that the scanners would not pick up clones. This way, the Jesuits could flood the world with clones and nobody would know about it. And they messed up the scanners at Church of Gail. Church of Gail is supposed to be set up so that we can detect clones. And apparently, when the Sandra Metcalf, my sister clone, took over Church of Gail, she messed up the scanners. And Vladimir thought that because once we got rid of her, that when my men took over, he thought everything was okay and that they'd fixed everything. But he didn't realize that the men that took over were clones. You may say, how could Vladimir not know this? Well, he's been so busy this month fighting my sister, and he hasn't been at Church of Gail all the time. So I guess, because he wasn't there all the time and he didn't have intimate dealings with my men, he didn't really pick up that the men he was dealing with were clones. So, and I think he also trusted the computer technology at Church of Gail to pick it up. And he didn't take into consideration the fact that the Jesuits sabotaged the computer technology at Church of Gail so that clones would not be detected. So that's the reason I said, scientists, you need to make sure all computer technology all over the world that we've set up to scan for Jesuits also scans for clones. Or if not, we will not beat these people, because that is one of their key strategies.